The camera had been set up to capture the quiet, ordinary life of a remote forest. The research team expected nothing unusual, perhaps a deer wandering through, a fox hunting in the undergrowth, or the occasional predator making its silent passage. But when the latest batch of footage was retrieved, what it captured sent shockwaves through the team, and soon through the entire world. It started on a routine Tuesday. Alex Lang, a conservationist, sat in the small, makeshift office at the project's research camp, stationed on the forest edge. His desk was cluttered with hard drives and notebooks, the hum of his laptop the only sound in the quiet space. He was alone that day, the rest of the team out in the field. Sifting through hours of mundane footage, Alex barely paid attention as clips played out on his screen. Bears foraging, owls swooping through the trees, shadows shifting with the wind. The footage was meant to document wildlife patterns, and while the project was important, it was repetitive work. When he had joined the team, he had imagined uncovering something remarkable, perhaps a rare species thought to be extinct, or a natural phenomenon no one had recorded before. But so far, his days had been filled with the usual cycles of forest life. That was until 7:42 a.m. on the most recent recording. The footage played as usual, a narrow forest path cutting through gnarled trees. The wind murmured softly through the dense canopy, beams of golden light filtering through the leaves. The world was silent, untouched, serene. And then, from the left side of the frame, she appeared. Alex's breath caught in his throat. He leaned in, his eyes locked on the screen. A woman emerged from the underbrush, her pale hair almost glowing against the dark backdrop of the forest. She wore a black, skin-tight outfit, something resembling a leotard or swimsuit, bizarrely out of place in the wilderness. Her arms hung limply at her sides, her head tilted slightly downward, as though she were moving on autopilot. She never looked at the camera. She just walked. A cold shiver crawled up Alex's spine. There were no trails near that spot, no reason for anyone to be there. In all the months they had been monitoring the area, they had rarely seen people, and certainly none dressed like this. The woman moved further into the frame, then suddenly stopped. Slowly she turned her head, as if reacting to a sound behind her. The camera captured nothing, just the forest, silent and unbroken. After a moment, she continued walking until she vanished into the shadows. The footage ended. Alex's hands trembled as he rewound and replayed the clip. Again and again, he watched her eerie movements, her vacant expression. Something about her was wrong, not dangerous, not aggressive, just wrong. His rational mind tried to offer explanations. Maybe she was a lost hiker. But then why was she dressed like that? Why hadn't she called for help? Why hadn't anyone else reported seeing her? The unease settled deep in his gut. He knew one thing. He couldn't keep this to himself. Alex sent the footage to his boss, Maria Jenkins. Within hours, it had reached local authorities. Within days, it had leaked to the internet. And then, the world saw her. The video went viral, igniting a storm of speculation. News outlets picked it up, and online forums exploded with theories. Some claimed it was a hoax staged for attention. Others insisted it was an elaborate art project. But the more supernatural-minded believed something else. Whispers of forest spirits, lost souls, and ghosts spread like wildfire. But there was one thing no one could explain. The footage was real. Experts confirmed that it had not been tampered with. The woman had truly been there, in the depths of the forest, where no one should have been. Authorities launched a search, scouring the area for any sign of her. They found nothing, no footprints, no belongings, no indication that anyone had been living there. And then, a breakthrough. A man named Carl Reynolds came forward during a live news broadcast, his voice shaking, eyes rimmed with tears. "The woman in the video," he said, "is my sister, Emily Reynolds. She's been missing for 4 years." Emily Reynolds had vanished without a trace during a solo road trip across state lines. Her car had been found abandoned at a rest stop, 20 miles from the forest. Despite extensive searches, no clues had surfaced. The case had gone cold. Until now. The revelation stunned the world. How had Emily survived all this time? Why was she still in the forest? And why did she look so vacant, so detached from reality? Speculation ran wild. Some believed she had been kidnapped and had only just escaped. Others thought she had suffered an accident, lost her memory, and wandered into the woods. A darker theory suggested she had willingly disappeared, choosing the isolation of the forest over returning to the world. Carl didn't care for the theories. He just wanted to find his sister. With renewed urgency, search teams returned to the forest. Drones scoured the landscape, helicopters hovered overhead, and teams ventured deeper than ever before. But despite their best efforts, Emily was nowhere to be found. It was Alex who ultimately found her. Unable to shake the image of Emily from his mind, he decided to retrace her steps. Studying the footage frame by frame, he cross-referenced it with other camera recordings, eventually identifying the exact location where the video had been captured. The path was barely visible, overgrown with thick underbrush. But he pushed forward. For hours he pressed deeper into the wilderness, branches clawing at his clothes, his breath growing ragged. And then, just as he considered turning back, he stumbled into a clearing. At its center stood a shack, old, weathered, and rotting. It looked as though it had been abandoned for decades. But inside, someone was there. She sat on the ground, her back to him, hunched over, her blonde hair tangled and dirtied. She didn't move as he stepped closer. "Emily," Alex said softly. She flinched but did not turn. He knelt beside her and gently touched her shoulder. This time, she turned. Her eyes, wide and glassy, met his. And for the first time in years, Emily Reynolds began to cry. Emily was rescued, but the mystery remained. She was malnourished, dehydrated, and emotionally fragile, her memories fragmented and unreliable. She spoke of something that had kept her in the forest, but when asked what it was, she could never quite explain. The shack where Alex found her held few answers. Investigators determined it had been abandoned for years, with no evidence of anyone else living there. Yet, Emily had survived, somehow. Psychologists theorized that she had suffered a mental break, leading her to isolate herself in the woods, surviving off instinct alone. Others weren't so sure. Carl didn't care about the theories. He had his sister back, and that was all that mattered. Alex never stopped thinking about that day. He often returned to the forest, not out of fear, but gratitude. For all its mysteries, the forest had given something back. Perhaps Emily hadn't been found by chance. Perhaps, in some way, she had wanted to be seen. Now, we turn to you. What do you think really happened to Emily Reynolds? Have you ever heard of similar stories? Let us know in the comments below. Thanks for watching. We'll see you in the next video.